Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Containers exam EX188. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click that subscribe button. And if you find the video useful or you enjoy it, make sure you do click like. Also a reminder that these are my practice sessions for my upcoming EX188 exam, which will be actually a week from today. The goal of these is for me to talk about whatever the objective is, possibly explain what the objective means, and do some exercises for whatever the objective is asking. These are not intended to be training materials, nor are they intended to be tutorials, because I myself am still learning, but rather it's an opportunity for me to do a self-assessment during my last week of preparation and to show, where my strong points are and where I might need to spend a bit of time doing some brushing up before the exam. So continuing with the run multi-container applications with Podman, the next item here is working with environment variables. Now this is kind of interesting as far as, all right, so multi-container applications, we know we can do -- environment. One thing I do want to explore with this outside of the realm of Podman Compose, which I suspect is the intention behind some of these objectives in this section. Of course, there's no way for me to know, and even if I did, I couldn't share because of NDA. But I want to look at part of the Podman run command. And what I'm wanting to look at is specifically, of course, let me just maximize this window so I don't deal with that again. Here we go. I'm wanting to look about environment variables because we can do -E and -E and V over and over and over again, but I know that it supports reading a file. And so what I'm curious of is that particular file. So we'll just call it foo.txt. And in this, we're going to do our standard MySQL environment variables. MySQL user equals foo. MySQL password equals foo. MySQL database also equals foo. All right, so let's try this. We're just going to, I got to search for MySQL. I have memorized just the UBI image and the web server, but well, I guess I could do this with UBI. So we'll do Podman run, and we'll give this a name. I guess this will be env file, foo.txt, and the image will be registry.access.redhat.com, UBI8, UBI, and we're going to run the env command. Well, it hasn't errored yet, so I don't have a syntax error. Or supposedly I don't have a syntax error. We'll find out. Yep, and there we have our environment variables that we specified in the file. So that's another way of getting your environment variables in. So how this goes to this idea of the multi-container applications, I am curious. Podman pod create help. As the concept of pod in this respect is what I like to think of as a container of containers. It's the pod grabs a kernel namespace that all the containers ultimately share. And I was curious to see if maybe we could pass some type of environment variable storage to the pod, and then it can pass it along to the rest of the containers within. It does not look like there's anything there, and that kind of makes sense because really when you get to the environment variables, that's what the container is going to be using for things it needs for its application. So let's go into a compose file here, and this time I actually do need to search for the I guess I don't have to. One thing to keep in mind with Podman Compose is, to my knowledge, there is no offline documentation for the Compose spec that I think would be available to us for the exam. But I'm trying to remember if you can specify command with that. Well, let's find out. That's why we have a practice session, right? So we'll do compose.yml. You can do .yaml as well, YAML, but I'm so used to doing just .yml for my Ansible stuff. So speak of the devil, Ansible. All right, so services. We'll just do rel1. Brain and fingers are not connected. All right, image is going to be registry dot access dot redhat.com UBI8 UBI. I'm going to do I think it's the env file. I'm just curious to see if it will do what I expect here. And we're going to see if CMD is a valid thing. All right, so Podman up. Let's do Podman up. Must do I mean? Oh, Podman compose. Now I need to install it. Each time I do one of these videos, I revert my snapshot so I have a clean environment. So pip3 user install Podman compose. Guess I need to do user after install. That wouldn't make sense. Because I could probably install this to the system as well. All right, so Podman compose up. All right, so we had exit code 0, which I kind of expect. What I'm curious about though is if it read a file, it read the right file there. Oh well, what I was going to try to do is have it run just the command cmd, which it probably did. I mean the command env, which it probably did because it didn't complain. Well, let's look closely at what was actually done. So Podman create name label. Because really what Podman compose is doing is translating what you have in the YAML file to Podman commands. I'll probably edit out the silence while I'm looking through this. That's where it does its... All right, well, it didn't complain about syntax, but I don't see any indication that it ran that command. So CMD might not be a thing. That'll be something. I think between now and the exam, you can look at the specification file, and I'll practice a couple more scenarios with Podman Compose. Of course, I don't know if Podman Compose will be on the exam, but I have a hunch. All right, so Podman search MySQL. I know we can do an example with MySQL that it'll be very clear if the environment variable file works. Compose. Okay, so I'm going to change this to the MySQL one. We're just going to stick with the env file. And let's get rid of all of our... Well, that's kind of interesting. Oh. Yeah, never mind. I'm like, hey, there's a container with env. Well, yeah. 6 minutes ago when I was first looking at the environment files, we made a container. All right, so podman rm-f-a. I want to get rid of these containers, and now we'll do podman compose up. And I forgot to put it to the background, but that's fine. And we see that it translated env underscore file in there to the env file directive. Okay, so that created its container. And of course, I told it to not go into the background. Yeah, I know. Stuff's broke. Podman down. Podman compose down. I'm going to cat foo.text because I'm going to do this a lazy way. So another way that we can express environment variables is, well, of course, it didn't copy the way that I wanted. That's fine, is to actually use the environments directive with this. So instead of using our nice little text file, we will actually have environment. And then underneath environment, we will specify some dictionaries. So MySQL user foo, MySQL password foo, and MySQL database foo. And clear my screen. Compose up, and we see our -e's for environment variables. Now this is outside the scope of this, but if you have watched any of my practice session videos for other exams, you know I don't like leaving loose ends if I can help it. So I think this may be a way to, we have no documentation for the compose spec offline, but since this is just translating the YAML onto commands, we may be able to, I guess this will be useful in the exam, just in a pinch, kind of guess and figure out what it would be. So let's do podman run -- help. So I'm looking for, there's no CMD for that, but there is entry point. So I wonder if we could do this. So podman compose. One thing I am going to do, we're going to test this out. I'm fairly sure even if you have some like bogus thing, it's not going to error. I'm about to be proven wrong, I'm sure. No, it didn't error. And clearly, I mean, it's erroring there because I interrupted the container, but exit code 0 as far as the actual build. And so I guess what Podman Compose does is if you have, let me just cap what I put in there. If you have some nonsense thing, it seems like it ignores it. Now, what's curious, in a previous video, I'll have to go back and look, but I think I had misspelled environment when I was doing some environment variables, and it blew up. So it's kind of a curious thing with Compose. But anyway, what I wanted to try, let's go back to our universal base image, and we're going to do our environment file, and that's going to be foo.text. Get rid of these lines here. Entry point, let's do the env command. And I wonder if I have to do the syntax or not. Well, let's find out. All right, so clear podman rm af. Get rid of our containers, podman compose up, and see what happens. Okay, so yeah, did the entry point, so it automatically encapsulated that. That's curious, and it ran the as the entry point. That is basically what your container is built to do, and it ran the command, and we see that it did read our environment file. So I'll take that, and I learned a little bit more about Podman Compose. And so I'm willing to bet, like I said on the exam, if you have to use Podman Compose for something and you're really stuck on, hey, I don't know, I can't remember my Podman Compose thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like feeding it nonsense is always going to give you an error, but since this is just translating it into a Podman command, you could probably figure out what you need. So going back to the objective, working with environment variables, I think I know how to work with some environment variables, so I'm pretty confident with this. If you found the video useful, make sure you do click like, and I always want to thank my returning subscribers for watching another video, even though sometimes I'm real streaky as far as I make my videos really as I have time, and then I have a particular project to work with. But perhaps I'll become more consistent. But the older I become, the more precious my time is, and I find I seem to not have as much of it. But even though that can't possibly be true. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do click that subscribe button. As always, thank you for your time, and I will see you the next time.